Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the panel, Acting Trebles. I hope you all have had a wonderful BronyCon up until now. It is my disappointment to bring to you the news that this is the last day ever of BronyCon. But there is good news. It's still the morning. There's still the full day left for you to enjoy. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring up our guest panelists for this panel. Introducing Rebecca Shoichet. Rebecca Shoichet. I know, I'm sorry, it's Sunday. And then, please welcome to the stage, Creber. And finally, please welcome to the stage, Black Griffin.
Good night.
Hello.
Hello.
I think half of us are still using
You know, it takes real dedication to come here this early. It's not that early, I guess. But thank you. Thank you double.
We say it's 11:25.
Yeah, well, it's still pretty early for Sunday. That said, once again, this panel is Acting Trebles, so we are going to be discussing singing specifically for a character, and the differences that you're going to be doing to approach singing as a character rather than just singing as a performance. And to just kick things off, go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about what characters you've done singing roles for.
Well, I'm Rebecca Shoichet, and I have done the singing voice for Twilight Sparkle. And so when you hear the theme song, that's me. Most of you guys know that. And then I did the singing voice for Sunset Shimmer. And I've also done some choral work on the show, like for, I think at the gala and things like that. Some of the bigger group chorus stuff, done some of that. And I think, I'm not sure, now I'm starting to doubt myself. I think there's one where an Equestria Girls thing where Toy has a garden that kind of comes along. And I'm singing some of those crazy voices. Somebody might have to bring that up on their phone for me. Pretty sure it's me.
And I am Creber. Hi. The only thing I love you. I sing for. I sing for Ed Blue and sometimes Sweetie Belle. And yeah, I think I've also done some choral stuff every now and then with Daniel and a lot of the demos, so I knew some of the songs before they became what they became. You know, what's that one song? Bapseed used to be like full rock metal. That's what it started as. So yeah, that's me. That's me.
That's me. The room. Well, hi, Mark. Anyway.
Hi, Mark. Hi, a pretty customer.
So I'm Gabriel Brown, or Black Creber. Yeah, I'm waiting for my name to pop up on that. I should have picked Mercy as a shoe. And I've sung, well, yeah, I've done some choral stuff on My Little Pony. I also sang on the Songs of Harmony CD and stuff like that. I've done a lot of demos with Daniel as well. And then I sang in Littlest Pet Shop, and I did some My Little Pony commercials, in different deep voices, and then the YouTube stuff like No Mercy and Beep Beep Bop Sheep and that ridiculousness.
Excellent. So to just go ahead and kick things off, when you're trying to find a character's voice, especially one that you are not the original voice actor for, you're doing a stand-in singing for it, where do you begin on trying to find what that singing voice sounds like? Do you start trying to learn the natural speaking voice first? Do you research the character background to bring out some kind of inflection, how you think that would sound in singing? Where do you start?
When you're singing the voice for someone else.
Yeah, so when you're singing the voice of Twilight Sparkle or Tara Strong's character, where do you start for finding that singing voice?
Well, that's a special case because I actually got the role without trying to sound like her. They said, be yourself, sing like your natural sort of youthful pop voice. And so I did that. So that one is not a case where I would answer that question, because if I were to take another character that had already had an established voice and then try to sing like them, I would really want to study the diction and the enunciation of the other actor and how they produced sound. Sometimes people have like super southern accents, and that might be something that would create a character inside. So I try to adapt, or I try to take on physically and then sing through that. We all go to, you know, when we're learning how to sing, you all start from, pardon me, a very basic, well, at least I did, a very basic classical way of singing so that it was open, and then I like to teach that when you've got your most open palette of being able to sing, that you can shape it and change the sound after that. So if you're singing correctly, using your diaphragm, using your rib cage, and keeping lots of space in your throat, and you know, lots of using your resonators and all that, then you can change how those resonators work. You can either close your nostrils, or you can, you know, stuff like that. So it might shape depending on the character. Maybe it's a really super crazy character, and maybe it's good. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely about those little nuances you're talking about, because when you're trying to copy someone else's voice but translating it into singing, it's a lot more restrictive because your pitch is already determined. You know, melodies are set, and if there's a high energetic, you know, usually a high register character that's singing like a low harmony, you have to figure out a way to make that glue, right? So yeah, the accent, where you're putting your sound, like is it in the front of your face? Is it kind of in the throat? It's focusing on the little details because you have a lot more restriction. But also with me and Sweetie Belle, same kind of deal. I mean, Claire and I, we've known each other for a very, very, very long time. And especially when we were younger, we had very similar voices. And sometimes when she's over at my house, she'll call to my mom and she'll answer thinking it's me. We do that all the time. So, you know, that was just another case where it kind of worked out perfectly. I didn't have to learn anything too intensely for it to work naturally. But yeah, what would you say, Gabe?
Correct.
One more thing I will say though is that through the years I did listen a lot to how Tara would deliver, and so it did change how I approach singing for her character, because she's created this incredible quippy and just the tone of her voice is very clear, and so I had to kind of keep sort of remembering that while I'm singing. So it's like, there's a little Tara.
Right. As a follow-up to that, and this is just for any time you're singing any character's voice, you went into talking about voice mix, and also there was some talk about forward and backward placement. Where do you kind of find that default when you're doing a character voice? Let's just say they don't tell you to do a classical, natural singing voice. Do you find yourself using more of that forward placement to try to get more of that character talkiness or some twang? Or where's your default in finding that voice?
I like what you said there about using a more character voice. In the context of cartoon, that's actually probably one of the biggest things that makes it easiest, because in cartoons it's that slight talk sing, like, you know, we're really bringing the cartoon element into it. So it's not about, you know, doing this beautiful, like, full singing operatic. You know, we're talking about Pinkie Pie like running through Ponyville, and it can be more talk than normally with singing. So I think that's definitely that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, toxic.
Toxic. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Not
we're
toxic.
Not that.
Toxic.
what exactly are like the technicalities of what makes it toxic?
Well, if you're going to literally say a word through the middle of a line of a song.
Yeah. Like, try to think of an example. Something just went right to the back of my throat. Okay, don't try to say it. Don't. No, I think like something just flew in my. Whoa. No, I think something like a fluff just like went right. Oh, I can feel it.
These are excellent points.
This is my process, I swear.
Something went back in my throat. I can feel it. That's toxic. So that's sort of what creates this reality. It's very musical theater style.
Yeah.
You're making the storytelling more important than the notes that you're singing. So your character, every time we go into the studio for say a My Little Pony song, especially for me, if I haven't done the script, because I'm not Tara, I really have to get a strong sense from the directors and the musical writers, like the writers, where is Twilight right now? What's going on for her? And not about where. Sometimes it's where physically in space, because if you're singing in a small room to yourself, that's different than singing down a hallway or like at the top of a staircase or something. It's different projection and different amount of energy you're going to use. But it's really important to find the placement of where that person is in their journey of storytelling. Is this at the beginning of the episode? Is she confused? Is she troubled? Or is this maybe at the end of the episode when she's having maybe a breakthrough? And so is there kind of a release? Is this a joyful place that she's coming from? You know, so there's a lot of, depending on the story, that's how we will approach the delivery of the song. So it's like delivering a speech or a poem, and it's important to know why you're saying what you're saying. So it's good to have that context. We usually get quite a good little chat before we start. Sometimes it's in like a demo process, sometimes it's pre the record, sometimes it's you get more advanced notice than that. Like sometimes we just get a song and then we go to the studio. And we've heard a demo maybe, or we haven't heard a demo, or we learn it, yeah, they go, hey, can you sing this? And we're like, what's going on? So then they tell us.
Yeah. So is that something that mostly happens in studio, or would you say that you get the script in advance more often than not?
If we're doing the song, if we're recording it officially for the show, not just the demo, we'll get it ahead of time. But sometimes with the demos, we might receive it when we get there or the night before or something.
Learn as you go kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I know Gabe and I have talked about this before, but just talking on that kind of singing where you're prioritizing the story. In terms of my own pop singing, that's actually something I've really been insistent on is bringing the story to more of a forefront. Like I like to add that musical theater, that cartoon element, and Gabe's the same way where, you know, that's when the lyrics really matter to people, I think. There's a huge difference. Now that I don't have a fluff in the back of my throat, I can show you an example of what I meant. What's a pony song? Smile Song, or what was stuck in my head this morning? Apples to the Core. That was stuck in my head. So this is the difference. So I've got the voice. It sounds practically identical, except I'm not telling the story for option A. We're apples forever, apples together. We're family, but so much more. Sounded good, right? Like, you know. Okay. I didn't mean like, sounds good, but it sounds correct.
But she's singing all the right notes.
Yeah, I'm singing all the right notes in the right tone
and in a lovely way.
Right, but what's happening in that song? They're traveling, they're a big, family band, they're on this wagon, and there's all this instrumentation, and she's got her whole family with her, so it's gonna sound like this, put into the context of the story. We're apples together, we're apples forever, apples together, we're family, but so much more, right? And then, that takes it, it's almost identical in what you have to do technically. It's just that right there was just a change in energy. So yeah.
You're also dancing, so you would be really out of breath. Like, if you want to go really accurate with it. Sorry.
But they are bouncing on a wagon, and so she put that energy into like, yeah, here we go.
And that's instinctively what I did with my body too, right? That's what really helps us in all elements of voice acting. Is like what I was talking about the other day when we did the voice acting event. Was we look like monkeys.
Oh, I was going to say it looks ridiculous in the booth.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and with the bounciness and all that kind of goes back to what Rebecca was talking about, with starting with your full voice and finding where that placement, that mix needs to be to get the proper resonance, and then shape it. Because I noticed as you're bouncing, there is some breathiness you were adding in, which normally you wouldn't be doing while singing, but because you're bustling, that adds to that energy of the song. Any kind of vowel shaping that you're doing to add to that energy. So those are some things to think about with just, how do you shape that once you find where it is in head and chest mix?
Yeah, exactly. And also she's talking to Pinkie Pie in that situation. It's like, yeah, I really want you to like me, and I want you to learn about it.
And I'm a little scared of you.
We're all a little scared of Pinkie Pie.
And how about with working with a team on a project, whether it's in the studio or remote? And I'm talking not just doing group singing, but is there a vocal coach on site giving you cues, helping you check your technique? Is this something that is pretty rare?
I have not experienced a vocal coach, though the person usually who has written the song will be giving you context clues, like, what's happening here is this character is really sad, but putting on a brave face. And then, that kind of changes the way you would approach it. But rarely is there someone there, like, at least in my experience, a vocal expert telling you, no, sing from the chest,
I think there's a certain standard that we're supposed to have at this rate. Whatever song they throw at us, ideally we should just be able to gather all the right information and bring it to life. And maybe if we, take the wrong approach, then we can switch on a dime and be able to take it a totally different direction if we misinterpreted what the material was.
Yeah, or even if we're very close, we have to be able to fine tune. So sometimes a voice director will say, the musical director will say, okay, can we do that pass again, take out the vibrato. And do you guys know what vibrato is? Yeah, okay. So instead of singing and letting that natural vibrato come in, it's like, okay, well, let's control it and go keep the note straight. And that, that kind of, it won't be vocal coaching, it'll be, can you hold this note? Can we open that note up? So it's more about technical tweaks than anything else to get what the end product.
That's also what comping is for.
Yeah.
Getting like 5 or 6 takes and then they just piece together the best parts of each, take.
Yeah.
And then when you're singing a song that has multiple characters, other actors, is that process pretty much you get sent the instrumental track and click track and then your part, and you don't even hear like scratch vocals for the other parts, you just sing what you're gonna sing?
Go for it.
It really depends, I guess, on the project. A lot of times there's scratch vocals. Like when I just did a project with Daniel that I booked, we're actually going to be in something together, which is kind of cool. Yeah. But it's a secret thing. I didn't say what it was. But for that, he didn't have time to record scratch vocals, so he added a piano, basically.
A guide track.
A guide, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't sing that high.
Yeah, that's very common too, actually, especially for demos. Because we're going to be singing the demo vocal, there is no vocal existing, so Daniel is probably the producer we're going to talk about most in this context because he's done all of the music for My Little Pony through all the seasons. That man, honestly, he's so brilliant. I marveled at him for years. He is prolific is the perfect word, and he always nails it. But usually he'll plunk in a little piano part, and it's funny. I don't technically read music. I've always been an ear person. Yeah, but so we'll have the sheet music, and usually I'll just be like the general pattern of the notes and like where the words are. But normally, he'll play it for us 2 times, and then just go and do it, and then oh, sorry, I didn't quite get that. Okay, let's do it one more time. And it's a pretty fast process once we're on a roll.
As far as that goes, there's a lot of variance because you can have a vocal session where, yes, there are a lot of guide tracks, or there are other singers who've already recorded their parts, and you have the engineer there, and you can say, well, in this case, it's like, hey, Adam, can you take out the harmonies so I can nail this part, or can you put the harmonies in so that I can blend? Sometimes for me, I'm singing with myself, and I like to go, okay, well, I like to make, especially if it's like a duet, I'm trying to sound like Sunset and try to sound like Twilight. It's like, okay, can we play the other character's part so that I can differentiate? We might be singing the same note, but I have to sing it like Sunset or like Twilight. Yeah. Talk about placement.
In the same place too. Yeah.
But the shape of your mouth can really change the way a note sounds. Like you'd be like, so that is the whole, technicality behind changing the way a voice sounds, even if the notes you're singing are the same. As Michelle was saying, restricted to the notes is a great way to say it, because it does feel like that.
Or mapped out by the notes too.
And the pacing too, because that's another big thing about what can change a character's speaking voice.
Have a character that talks kind of slow as opposed to one that's like all the way up here, right? Like in terms of speed.
That can totally change things. So,
but that's usually a good writer, a good musical writer will write at the pace of the vocalist.
Yes.
Or the actor. Like you don't have too many Pinkie Pie ballads.
Yeah,
I don't think. Right?
Yeah. Or in CMC songs, you don't often hear or ever hear Apple Bloom on the high harmony and Sweetie Belle on the medium harmony, right? Why did I just say medium? My goodness, it's what time is it, guys? It's 11:46. There's no excuse. Medium.
The extra medium.
The extra medium. I've got this. I look classy, don't I?
On the
She looks like an apple.
A quick follow-up, you mentioned the character's tempo pacing. I would be surprised if you experienced this with Daniel Ingram, but maybe in other projects or when doing a demo or audition, have you had that where there's clearly a fast-talking character and the music director or creator wrote it in a way the melody just doesn't match the character voicing, their pacing? What do you do to try to compensate if you run into that?
Well, they can always have fun with the animation if you guys know what I'm talking about. Do you remember that? Does anybody remember the Babseed song? Yeah. There's a part where Apple Bloom's singing and they've got, I don't remember which way it is, but either Apple Bloom's singing and Sweetie Belle's mouth is moving, or vice versa, and everybody like flipped out when they first saw it. They were like, no! I can't even really remember what the question is. I'm sorry. I just thought of that and I thought it was funny.
How you would compensate if you get in and you find the way that the melody is written doesn't match the character's pacing?
Yeah.
It's not for us to sort of judge that, because they may have a greater vision, and we're not the end, the end sort of critics of it.
No.
You can't criticize the work. You just have to do the work. We're there.
We're there to do it justice.
And also to try to elevate it. So you do your best to make it sound the best that you can, and whether it's like, whether you think it might not jive with the character, you don't have a say in that.
Yeah, you just want to be hired again. The client is old.
You simply have to serve the work. We're service people. we work in the service industry.
And then let's take a moment to talk about one-off vocal projects. So of course, Gabe, Michelle, you do a lot of this yourselves. Could you give some examples, and what are the advantages of doing a one-off project when you're doing character singing as opposed to in the studio, maybe some disadvantages? And you know, the obscure recognition that comes with a one-off, you know, it's not tied directly to the show, you don't have the marketing power pushing it out. Can you just talk through that a little bit?
Yeah, why don't you take that one, Gabe? You do a lot of cool one-off.
I feel like you have a little more freedom on a one-off. Unless, you know, like you said, that someone else is doing the speaking and you're doing the singing, you still have to be a little bit close to try to sound like the person. But like I did this thing, which was actually a parody of Friends. They did this commercial for My Little Pony. And I had to be like, whatever happened to God is not a
I was gonna say, wait,
Full
yeah,
House, yeah. Friends, and friendship is magic. It's early, sort of. But, yeah, no, but it was, that was, the big advantage is that voice was really hard to do, and I only had to do it once.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
yeah. I can't think of anything. You go.
I go, yeah, I think you have more freedom and you can have more fun with it and not worry about how you're gonna make that singing voice sound consistent through potentially a lot of variations of different songs and like, yeah, imagine a Pinkie Pie ballad, like, I don't know if that exists, but that would be, yeah. It does? Right. Oh, well done, Shannon, well done. Amazing, that's good. Well, then, dude, that's probably an example of somebody like Shannon who's been doing that singing voice for a long time, has the experience and skill to be able to make that work. So that must have been tricky.
All right. And then we had a lot of people ask ahead of the panel about auto-tune and its place. Yeah, I didn't really want to bring it up on the panel, but we might be opening to live Q&A soon, so I just wanted to let you guys get your thoughts out on auto-tune. Is it good for the industry in context? Has it made it approachable? Or I see Gabe outwardly expressing how I felt when I read this on my paper.
Poor Gabe.
Auto-tune is not a magic button that makes everybody sound good. There's this idea, I think. The only reason I do a lot of YouTube videos, and almost every video I do is something like, auto-tune. Even in like character impressions and stuff like that, that's obviously auto-tune Spider-Man. And it's like, I'm not even saying! But all auto-tune does, for those of you who, it seems obvious, but so you know, all auto-tune does is correct pitch. That's it. You can, with programs like Melodyne, change formant a little bit, which is basically the timbre of the voice, so going from a, you know, like that. Slight adjustment there. I will say though, a blanket tuning, not hard tuning, but blanket tuning software like Antares or something that can gently correct a note that might be a little flat or a little sharp is very helpful. Especially if you just have it set to chromatic. So if someone's singing way out of key, it's still gonna sound terrible. They'll just be right on the flat note, you know? But I believe, personally,
I personally believe that U.S. Americans are unable to...
Sorry. I think that it has sped up the industry. It makes recording songs easier. That can be frustrating for some people who have really tried to perfect their pitch so that they can be hired more because they will, it makes it frustrating for people who are really try to be pitch accurate because then people who aren't maybe as good are getting hired over you for convenience sake because they're like, we can just tune it, you know?
Well, we're classically trained and we're trained to be live on stage.
Yes.
There's no auto-tune live as well, unless you're like a superhero pop star, like where they actually they can have auto-tune.
Which is
live
insanely common now too. Like all of those big shows that happen in arenas that you see, they have just potentially multi-million-dollar machines running auto-tune through systems. It's pretty crazy nowadays. But yeah,
they will actually find the key of the song and they will set the vocals through that key, so you actually can't even go flat. It's not chromatically tuned; it's tuned to the key of the song. So it's fascinating.
I always it's funny because like I take pride in singing in pitch, and I feel as soon as somebody says, "Oh, that's okay, we can pitch," I always,
let me do it again. Yeah.
yeah, I'll say no, let me try it again. But to be honest, a lot of post production is when they're mastering the song or whatever, before they even master the song, they're going to run all of the vocals. They say, we still run all of the vocals through auto-tune. And I'm like, why? Because I feel, to me personally, I feel that it dilutes the intention, or it takes away the humanity of the voice. So it turns the voice into a robot voice. And even if it's just that little amount, it's still not a natural sound. And I kind of just believe in natural creation of sound. I mean, we can all, thank you. I feel like we can get back to that more in music, and I think that there is a trend of getting back to that, because like ever since the very first really drastic, do you believe in love after love? You know, like that, like when Cher started doing that, it was an effect, and it was used like an instrument, and that was kind of cool and fun, but to me it was like, oh, I don't know if I can go down this road. But it's been many, many years of auto-tune as a standard across the board. And I think, yeah, I'm gonna shut up now.
Yeah. Although I do want to ask a follow-up, because you mentioned making your voice sound robotic when they just run all vocals through auto-tune, and we talked a lot about character voice here, so you might use vocal scooping occasionally, which is likely going into microtones, which the Western ear isn't trained to microtones. Those exist between the diatonic notes, but they aren't out of tune. They're accurate, so you're probably dipping into that some, and auto-tune probably removes that and kind of removes some of the character. I haven't played with auto-tune, would you agree?
I think it does. I think it does. It straightens things out.
You can set the attack speed of auto-tune now.
Okay.
So you can have it hit immediately, or you can have it slowly hit, and that accommodates for vocal scooping, but it eventually lands you on the exact note, and I agree, it takes humanity out of it, especially in character singing. Yes, you want to be hitting the notes, but hovering around the note is not necessarily a bad thing,
right,
honestly, unless you're way off. But you're right, actually, in Japan, because I've performed in Japan for a long time, they are set several semitones flatter than we are. They're like, so when our bands would collaborate, we would actually have to tune to one, I forget, it was like 440 or something, I don't remember the exact frequency. But yeah, those are things that we tune to the Western ear, as you said.
Yeah. Check out the brain on this guy, eh?
These conventions are bigger than Baltimore.
Big brain.
All right. We have about 20 minutes left, so we can go ahead and open up to some live Q&A.
Hey, we want to hear what you guys have to say.
Yes.
Oh, kids first, right?
Yeah. And do remember, it is only 20 minutes, so we probably won't get through a lot of you.
And just one question each if you can.
Yes.
So that everybody gets a chance.
And we'll try and answer
And keep
that
your questions under half a second.
And you must be able to do a handstand while you ask your question.
Or you will be disqualified.
Any children or anybody with accessibility issues, you can please come up to the front and take care of them first.
Thank you, Constance.
I just wanted to find out if you've ever thought about covering one of your songs with Becky.
Oh my gosh.
an example of what that would sound like.
That would be funny.
So here we are. I like it. Let's put that on the next album.
Morning, guys.
Hello.
So my question is for Michelle, actually.
Hello.
So considering that you've been voicing and singing for Apple for quite some time, was there a point where, obviously, getting older, where you had to kind of change things up because your voice was naturally changing as well? Did you have to kind of compensate in some way?
Yeah, I think all three of us, Maddie, Claire, and I, definitely had to. Because, you know, we all hit puberty, as everybody does, and my voice especially, I mean, I had a very high speaking and singing voice. I sounded like a little mouse when I was even, like, 12. And now I have I sit very deep in my register, just naturally talking, as you can hear. So definitely, I think there was about a year or so of just adjusting to that. Thankfully, you know, it's better for girls. It's harder for boys a lot of the time, just because they tend to have a more significant drop in their range. But yeah, with both the speaking and the singing voice, there would have had to be a bit of an adjustment. It's basically you get a new set of tools, and you have to figure out how to use them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is true. That's one of the things I had to do for a while. Gabe would always make fun of me. I did the voice like this for a little while because that's where I could find it most. I mean, it's maybe a bit exaggerated, but yeah, basically.
Thank you.
Hello there.
Hello.
So, what was the moment that you guys might have had when you were recording singing voices that, where you ad-libbed something, or like you thought of something, like a mistake that happened in a song, where it's like, you just halted because you had to laugh?
That happens.
Can you repeat the question?
Like a blooper moment, like when you're singing that you just had to hold up, it's just like, you know, kind of like a giggle fit and laugh, you know, it halted everything.
Well, sometimes for me, if I'm recording and I'm in the moment, if I lift up off the page and I think I know where I'm going with the lyrics or the next part of the song, and then you find yourself singing the wrong thing, you know, or you're like, and then I can't remember the rest of the words of this song. So anyways, it's that kind of thing that sometimes happens, so blooperish, I guess, in a way, but I don't have a specific memory of like something that exactly happened. What about you?
I remember one vicariously through you and Monique when they were recording Flim Flam Brothers. Apparently they kept saying Flim Flam Brothers Super Speedy Spider Squeezy.
I think I still sing that. That's funny.
All right, thank you.
What is
The ceiling!
The ceiling is nothing up there except Twilight.
Oh, there she goes.
Do you have a question for us?
Yes, I do. So, I'm an inspiring Brony musician. What are you guys' personal opinions on the way that fan-made Brony music is going? Because I know that Gabriel started in with it, but then I heard that he stopped doing it due to copyright. Now he's doing his original ones. They're really, really, really good, by the way. Really proud of this new album you're doing. But with you, Michelle, what are your personal opinions, and if you have any advice, how can somebody who actually really is so passionate about making fan-made music like really good, that they want to avoid copyright and all that other stuff?
Yeah, well, if you're doing a fan-made project, I feel like one of the best things to do would be to find other people in that community who are willing to collaborate with you.
That's hard.
Well, but this is like the perfect place to ask around, right? And sometimes it feels like with collaborations, if you're in a rut, it feels like there's nobody out there who's wanting to do what you want to do. Like sometimes
Been there 10 times.
Sorry?
Been there 10 times.
Right.
I've been trying to get people to collaborate on my projects. They're like, oh, I'm too busy. And then here they are hanging out with somebody else or being bored and stuff like that. So.
Well, then that's an opportunity for you to maybe take on more initiative of, you know, producing your own music and dabbling in maybe playing the piano or playing the guitar, because the more
I'm doing that with GarageBand.
Oh, well then perfect. Great, yeah.
I actually have made like 2 fan-made songs, and I'm still improving.
Just keep making them then, and make as many as you can, and post them, and get more people involved if you can.
Thank you for your time.
Sorry to be repeating myself here, y'all, but I've already said this to Gabe twice. I don't think I've had an opportunity to say it to you, Miss Michelle or Miss Rebecca. But on behalf of the military bronies, thank you for being a part of such a great show. And this question's kind of just for Gabe Michelle, but if you want to answer, you can. You guys, I know you guys do a lot of pop music, but have you ever thought about doing a country album?
Why would you ask that question?
Because I think you could do a good John Denver.
Oh, really? Well, thank you. I love John Denver, by the way. But, you know, we actually have I've done a few, like, country-ish things. Me and my brother and I have written a few country songs. We just actually haven't recorded them yet. But if you watch our genre switching videos, we will do like country covers. We did a country cover of "In My Feelings" by Drake, which was a bit ridiculous. But I don't know about an album, but it's definitely on the table.
Or just do music, just and stuff.
Yeah, no, I will actually keep that in mind because we're always looking for new like covers to do.
I'm a super, I like that. I like that country in my feelings. It's good. You should go watch it. I'm a big fan of starting at pop as a bass line. I would say that all of my songs probably qualify as singer-songwriter pop, but I like to incorporate elements from a whole bunch of different genres. And so that album I did last year on display had 3 songs that I recorded with some amazing musicians in Nashville, and just by kind of branching out to those type of musicians, as opposed to, like what we do with Nathaniel, which is often more Nathaniel Basic. Yeah, totally. Which is often more like EDM and very like pop-based. So just by kind of producing the song in a different way, even though it wasn't written to be a little bit country, most people were like, "Oh, I liked that had a country element." So I don't know if we really release a lot of stuff that's like country, but I'm a big fan of just incorporating little stylistic things and instrumental things from different genres.
I sing in various cover bands, and we often do country. Country is a real guilty pleasure. I love singing country. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. And I've done some recordings, like singing background vocals for country artists, and it's a whole other set of skills that, it's funny because Britt McKillop, who plays Princess Cadence, her father is a music producer, and I've worked with him on some projects, and so stuff that he's produced, I've done some. I actually am on a couple country albums, but just background vocals. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hello. This question is for Michelle. Which song from the show did you have the most fun working on?
I forget the official title, but it's the talent show one. Maddie and I, that was one of the very rare times where I actually was in the session with another singer doing the official recording for the episode, and Maddie and I just, like, poor Maddie, wrecked her voice trying to do that, like, terrible, because it was great, because with Sweetie Belle, I was allowed to be, the good singer. Sweetie Belle was supposed to be good, and then Apple Bloom was supposed to be, like, medium bad, and so Daniel after was like, "Oh yeah, I actually had to." This is an example of when auto-tune is a tool. He's like, "Oh yeah, I actually had to like make it a bit pitchier. I had to make Apple Bloom like a little bit worse." Because it was kind of like Sweetie Belle, Apple Bloom, and then Scootaloo's over here, and he's like, "Yeah, let's just kind of like put her right in the middle." And then Maddie, we just had such a good time, so that's probably my favorite.
Thank you.
Her technique is too good.
Gabriel Brown.
Hello.
What's the highest note that you can sing without using falsetto?
That's a good question.
I don't think whatever it is, it's not what we'd hit right now, probably.
Correct.
Can I interject in here really quickly about falsetto? There's a misnomer out there between falsetto and head voice.
Yes.
Falsetto is really this really open thing. It's not great for your vocal cords. If you've heard the darkness, that's falsetto.
Yeah.
Head voice is more of using your full voice just above the vocal break. Like that.
I actually have a kind of a low voice, so I developed, I had to work a long time on this, but I developed a mixed voice that's kind of a mixture between my full voice and my head voice. So I was able to get rid of my break. So I don't actually know where I switch anymore.
So I don't know. It's weird. I still haven't figured out what's going on in my throat. That sounds.
And it's something that can change daily. Actually, you know, when you're warming up, you're like, oh well, actually this, you know, today my vocal break would be about here, and this is where I've, like, if you actually broke it down, if you actually thought about it, you could find the place where you've chosen to approach from above on a lower note instead of below. So so what a mixed voice is when you're singing in your they call it your chest voice range, and then you get to a higher place in that range, then you start to approach it as though you're singing a slightly higher note and sing down upon it. So it creates this kind of attack, and it seems that's a little bit.
Exactly. This is my highest note. I'd say high C though is the highest that I can belt. So I don't know what that note is. All right. I don't have perfect pitch, so I'd have to find. No, I couldn't do it this early.
No, it's not.
All right, we're coming down to our last 5 minutes, so if we can keep the questions short, get everyone that we can through line.
Oh yeah, we do. Speak up.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Were there any songs you made or were a part of that you really liked it, but after the fans just kept shouting lines of it at you, you started to stop liking it?
Are we there yet?
I have none.
Me neither.
Hello. I just wanted to know, for this for everybody, what was the hardest of any song you've done, either on Pony or on any other projects you've done?
Oh my god. My brain just went total overload. Hardest song I've ever sung?
We probably, all three of us have probably had some pretty crazy things. You know, sometimes the hardest songs are ones that you have to sing live in a circumstance that doesn't really work, or again, your voice can change on a daily basis, and if something happens in the morning, it's like, you know, vocal cords are muscles, and so some days you can do 50 push-ups, some days you're tired, you can only do 20. So yeah, probably something live. I'm sure Gabe sang a lot of songs in foreign languages too, so that's probably pretty good.
It's tricky. It's one specific thing that I can remember right now is that I have a hard time singing at a funeral. Probably the hardest time I ever sang was for my step-grandmother, and so then the emotion, it's just like, no, there was no let's just sing this one switch. It just kind of, I sang through it, but that was the hardest emotionally. Thank you.
This is mostly from Blackbird or Gabriel, but if anyone wants to answer, it's cool. Honestly, I want to know really what inspired you, what got you started, and what, you know, got you into the whole field thing. I honestly been trying to do it, but I suck at FL Studio. I can't. I want to make a song, but I can't.
Production is difficult. My brother and I have been doing music for a long time, since we were very young. And when I joined the Navy, I thought I was going to kind of leave that. Yeah, join the Navy, me. Someone's going to boo me, you know. But when I joined the Navy, I thought I was leaving that behind me, and I ended up in the Navy band, and so it just kind of kept happening. And yes, production is difficult. But if you really want to do it, just don't compare yourself too harshly to other people. There's always going to be someone who can do something better. That doesn't mean that you're bad. That's just kind of what I have to tell myself all the time.
Yeah, it doesn't stop. It shouldn't stop you from creating your works.
Yes.
Yeah, if you just can trust that the messages that you're getting are good and correct, you keep working on your own thing. Because yeah, if you compare yourself, you'll spend your whole life feeling unworthy.
Yes.
Because we've all got people around us who are better at things than us. But if it's your dream and if it's your hope, you practice, you work on your craft, and you work with other musicians who support you, and you keep producing and keep working. And it's like a muscle, you gotta flex it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't work out your muscle of writing, you kind of lose it and you lose confidence. So the more you flex that muscle, the more confident you are that it's going to work for you.
The more
so
you
trust
can
yourself. I feel like you might need to trust yourself a little more. Sorry, I commandeered that one. I took over.
That's good.
Preach, Rebecca.
Move over, Dave. I'm taking this one.
Hi there. For Michelle and Rebecca, any weirdness or difficulty that comes from songs where you sing for multiple characters at the same time, like Twilight and Sunset or Two at the CMC?
Yeah, I mean, if you're singing with yourself, like I said, it can be challenging for sure. But hopefully the writer's written a really wonderful part and decides this person's going to be on this harmony or whatever, that you can differentiate in that place in your voice. So it doesn't necessarily have to be quite that meticulous, but that it is challenging for sure. I think I lost track of what the actual point of my answer was.
No,
You're welcome.
That was thank you.
Oh, sorry. No, Michelle, you're gonna answer that.
I completely agree. That's all I would have said. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you everyone for coming out. We do need to clear the room now, so if you want to talk to